and you still haven't answered the question that I asked right from the start. What is the evidence that whatever it is you're living for today is true, is reliable?
I suppose, for example, if we uncovered some early evidence of those 500 people.
So you would have to shatter and rattle my experience. Intellectually, you have some good points, but experientially, I think atheism and agnosticism is seriously lacking.
Good evidence that the historical Jesus claimed to be God. More detailed accounts of post-resurrection appearances.
So all you got to do is falsify the resurrection of Christ, and my faith is bankrupt, as Paul points out in 1 Corinthians 15.
Good explanation for the problem of animal suffering.
You're too intelligent, you're too thoughtful just to say, I blindly just go about my life. No, you don't blindly go about your life. You look for evidence.
J-Dan says, for both, what proof, in parentheses, evidence, answers, or artifacts would you need for you to change your opinion to the other side?
Well, first thing that I would want is a good explanation for the problem of animal suffering, a good explanation for why there's so many mistakes in the Bible. There is some ideas that, you could maybe encode messages into natural numbers. So in the book Contact, there is this idea that inside pi, you would find an encoded message. That would be excellent evidence for a creator God. But of course, we don't see anything like that.
To specifically adopt, I suppose, Cliffe and Stewart's Christianity with Jesus as God and all of this stuff, I want to give something a bit more practicable than this broad stuff. I suppose, for example, if we uncovered some early evidence of those 500 people who Jesus appeared to, and we had a list of their names, and we reliably knew that they claimed to have seen the risen Jesus in physical form, and that people did go and sort of check with them, something like that would be really powerful evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. If we had good evidence that the historical Jesus claimed to be God, that is identical to Yahweh, not just saying I and the Father are one, and then implying that what he means is I'm in the Father and the Father is in me, and the disciples will one day be in me as I'm in the Father. Not anyone who's seen me has seen the Father, as he says to Philip. And also when he says I and the Father are one, he's speaking to the Pharisees, and they accuse him of blasphemy. They say, "You claiming to be God?" And he says, "Haven't you read your own scriptures? Don't the Psalms say that you shall be called gods? And if God's willing to call his council gods in the Old Testament, then why not me?" In other words, they sort of seem to misunderstand what he was saying. If we had some early manuscript evidence of Jesus claiming to be God, and we had some kind of good evidence of this, like 500, or maybe like more detailed accounts of post-resurrection appearances, that kind of stuff, that putting those together, resurrected Jesus claiming to be God as identical to Yahweh, I think that'd be pretty powerful.
You got it. And with that, you want to say, folks, huge thank you to
wait,
our
we're
speakers.
not going to hear from the other side. We're not going to hear what would change Cliffe and Stewart's minds.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry about that. Cliffe and Stewart, floor is yours.
Over next. Yeah. I'm very grateful that question was asked, and I was fascinated by both Phil and Alex's answer to it. Their answer was totally an issue of evidence. More evidence. If I get more evidence, then I will believe. All right, fine. But see, the challenge is you're living for something, you're living for someone today, and you still haven't answered the question that I asked right from the start. What is the evidence that whatever it is you're living for today is true, is reliable? In other words, do you not have a double standard? A standard of evidence that Christ must meet in order for you to accept him, that you're not willing to apply to whatever the object of your worship is today, whatever the object is that you're living for today. That's where we've got to be brutally honest with ourselves. If I have a standard of evidence that must be met in order for me to believe it, Jesus falls short. Okay, no problem. But what is the option that meets that evidence that you have required? And that is why, Alex, I came down so hard on you for this agnosticism answer that you gave. It is intellectually unacceptable. It's impossible, because you have to live for something. You have to value or not value people. You have to have an ethical system, and you're basing it on something. You're too intelligent. You're too thoughtful just to say, I blindly just go about my life. No, you don't blindly go about your life. You look for evidence. So what's the option? And that's what I look forward to hearing from you at some point in the future.
Now,
Can I just say,
return now to answer this question specifically? If Jesus is not risen from the dead, my faith is bankrupt. So all you got to do is falsify the resurrection of Christ, and my faith is bankrupt, as Paul points out in 1 Corinthians 15.
For me, it lands on the same two, just in different kinds of ways. Obviously, the resurrection, it's a falsifiable historical claim. No other religion has a historical falsifiable claim that if you somehow undergird in a way that upends it, that the faith doesn't line up. It's not true. So you have to give me strong evidence that the resurrection didn't occur. So why the life change, why the event so close to the writing of, why the claims that they even saw something, why the explosion of the early church overnight of Jews happened. It's just nonsensical. So even, some of the top intellects who are atheists I read say, yeah, we don't have a good answer for any of these. So that's one. And then two, it's the experiential side. Hey, guys, look, great philosophers, but I think you got to grow in psychology and understanding the human experience. I think you could run circles around me philosophically and intellectually. I think I could run circles around you psychologically and experientially.
Did you know?
So for me, it comes down to like, how do you explain evil in an entirely religious term? You can't come about that from an atheistic perspective. Atheism is you're arguing from a negative, so it's a contradiction in and of itself. But agnosticism, I believe, intellectually it lines up, but experientially, it's kind of laughable. But I understand why you are an agnostic, because I have so many doubts. It's scary. I'm a doubting Thomas since I did from age 10. So I get it, Alex. I'm not saying it's ridiculous. But for me to really turn, it'd have to be the falsifiability of the resurrection. And then I would have to have more experiences that would say, hey, death's okay. Hey, no, it's optimism, not eternal hope. Hey, justice is just relative. You shouldn't fight too hard for human rights. Hey, identity issues. Hey, identity issues. It's all relative. And just let that kid think that he's a cat and that girl think that she's a pig. Everything's fine because ultimately people just subjectively decide who they are and what their truth is. All of these things rage against me, just like Steve Jobs on his deathbed. He was an atheist, but then turned to a pantheist. And he said, hey, look, intellectually, I thought kind of an atheist most of my life, but then all of a sudden, all this experience, he didn't say intellectual rationalism, and he was a brilliant guy. He said the experience of, I don't think all of my work and all of the equity from my relationships is just going to go away with the click of a mouse. I believe that there's more to life based off of experience. So you would have to shatter and rattle my experience. Intellectually, you have some good points. But experientially, I think atheism and agnosticism is seriously lacking.